Chapter 7 On the Coming of the Incarnate Archon. Author unknown. When the holy city fell by the hand of the Romans and was destroyed, Joseph of Arimathea found himself beset by despair. Christ's prophecy was fulfilled, and his great army had appeared in the sky, but it did not intervene. After the holy city had disappeared, Joseph returned to the remnants of the city, and thought of taking his own life amidst the rubble of the temple. Before Joseph acted upon his despair, he heard a voice. He looked, and he beheld a powerful flame. The flame was a man, and the man changed into a strange beast. The beast was shaped like a man, but had the skin of a lizard. In the eyes was the soul of a man. Then the lizard man changed again and became a man once more. Then the man changed again towards the likeness of a crocodile, yet he had the eyes of a man. Then the crocodile man became the original man once more. The man then changed again to have no hair and no ears, yet this creature had the eyes of a man. Then the creature returned to the form of a man. The man's skin had become gray and greasy and slimy, and he became a great newt in the shape of a man. Yet this creature again had the eyes of a man. The newt then became a man once more. Then the man became a great monstrous crab, but even this creature had the eyes of a man. Between the innumerable transformations that followed, the man maintained the same eyes that any man would have. And then, returning to the likeness of the original man, he then addressed Joseph. I am the messenger of the eternal light, the creator of all things, the One. I have come to you so that you may teach, so that you and the men of the eternal race may be saved from this eternal prison, by the knowledge of how this fallen realm was formed. Raise your head and see the eternal light of the immortal truth. As I have acted as your messenger, you may act as a messenger for the rest of the eternal race. Before all, there was the One. All is dependent upon the One. The One is dependent upon nothing. The One is the eternal light, from which all other light is but a reflection. He is not the greatest light, but rather light itself. From this light, all light came. From the One, the timeless Father's self-aware thought, Eunona was born. The Eunona flowed from the Father as water flows from a fountain. All the Eunona flow from the timeless Father. All Eunona are one with the Father, but none of the Eunona are the One. The One is the fountainhead of all Enoa. All being comes from the Enoa. The first Enoa is the consort of the One, the first and highest of all the eternal thoughts, the most holy and most beautiful Barbelo. She is the universal womb. Together the One and the Barbelo have the most perfect androgyny. Together with the perfect femininity of the Barbelo, the masculinity of the One is without error. With the perfect masculinity of the One, the femininity of the Barbelo is without error. Together they gave birth to the Logos, and they formed the perfect triple androgyny. After the Barbelo, there are many Enoona. Just as with the One and the Barbelo, every one of the Enoona has its consort, making it without error. Together each forms a perfect dual androgyny. Together each represents a transcendental. The lowest and least of these Enoona is Sophia, holy wisdom. Sophia became estranged from the invisible spirit of the One. That is because she broke away from her consort and thus also broke away from the One. She intended to form her own Enoona without the One. This was without the consent of the invisible spirit, who would have not approved of this bastard Enoona. As she was without the masculine power of her consort, and any Enoona she bore would not, since she was without the masculine power of her consort, any Enoona she bore would not form a perfect androgyny. Sophia is a divine Enoona and possesses unconquerable power, and her will cannot be held back. Yet without the consent of the invisible spirit, her masculine counterpart, the result could be nothing more than a monstrosity. And thus Sophia's bastard child was born. Sophia looked upon her child, whom her disordered desire had produced, with boundless horror and regret. The child had the face of a lion and a body of a great serpent. Her name is Yaldabaoth. Without the guidance of the eternal spirit of the One and her masculine counterpart, Yaldabaoth was misshapen. As the child sought the consolation of her mother, Sophia immediately rejected her child and pushed her out of the Pleroma, or the divine realm. Yaldabaoth was not ignorant, and she knew what and who she was from the moment of her conception. She was a divine Inona, like her mother before her, and had all her mother's immense knowledge and power. After her exile from the Pleroma, she was not filled with anger, but with terror. Yaldabaoth went into the deep darkness of the abyss, and stayed there for a timeless period, without any companion. In the isolation of the abyss, her terror gave way to sorrow and loneliness. Yaldabaoth's only recourse to her pain was to build her own Pleroma. Though, tragically, she had only existed in the Pleroma for a mere moment, and could remember almost nothing of its true nature. She had been blinded by the darkness of the abyss and unable to connect to the One without a consort, and could not increase her knowledge. In this ignorance of the nuances of the higher world, the Pleroma that Yaldabaoth created was inherently broken and inferior. This world is known as the Kyoma. Without connection to the One, she could not give birth to her own Inona, and so her world was constructed of degenerate inferior forms instead of the divine forms of the Pleroma. These inferior forms were made of matter, a crude bastard substance, which was a pale imitation of the perfect thoughts which existed in the divine mind of the One and the holy, spotless Pleroma. Yaldabaoth made herself into the one of this false Pleroma, and tried to emulate her own Inona. These attempted Inona are known as the Archons. These Archons were assigned to all the elements and heavenly bodies of the Kyoma. In the isolation of the abyss, and without a divine consort, these Archons could not have the divine spark of life which each of the Inona of the Pleroma contained. Without the divine spark, these Archons were without agency and knowledge of their own. As such, they were simply lifeless puppets and only moved upon the command of their divine chief mind, Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth was the chief and greatest of the Archons. The Archons are the powers and principalities of the earth. Despite all she had done to build the Kyoma, it was for naught, as the lifeless world could not relieve Yaldabaoth of her insatiable loneliness. The only recourse she had was to relieve this loneliness was to steal from the Pleroma. With the intention of stealing the divine spark, Yaldabaoth crept into the divine sanctuary of the Pleroma, and she was met there by Sophia. Sophia was still alone and not united in contemplation with her divine consort. Sophia had wept for her bastard spawn Yaldabaoth, and felt great grief for expelling her from the Pleroma. Sophia tried to convince Yaldabaoth to return to the Pleroma and live with her, pleading that perhaps she may be given a consort to live in divine fullness. Yaldabaoth, bitter from her mother's past cruelty, shrewdly rejected the offer and instead asked for Sophia to confer her divine wisdom and life-giving breath in the Kyoma which Yaldabaoth had constructed. Sophia was repulsed and horrified by the Kyoma, but she felt immense guilt for what she had done, and so she agreed to Yaldabaoth's petition. Within the Kyoma, Yaldabaoth had created the earth, but it was barren and without life. Sophia then blew into it and bestowed life upon it. All life in its breadth and magnitude was born from Sophia's breath. All that grows upon the earth was born. All that eats upon the waste was born. All the muck of the seas was born. All the animals that walk and creep upon the earth were born, save one, man. Sophia had not let any creation upon the earth have divine wisdom and the spark of a divine soul, which until then, at that point, only Inona had possessed. She warned Yaldabaoth that if such a creature was created, it could very well curse Yaldabaoth and hate her. For this creature would be a monstrosity, far greater than Yaldabaoth. For this creature would be born with some knowledge of its divinity, but without its fullness, and be cursed to this imperfect world of matter which Yaldabaoth had crafted. Regardless of Sophia's warnings, Yaldabaoth desired such a companion to live with her in the Konoma. After rejecting these demands, Sophia gave in to Yaldabaoth's protest and participated in the creation of humans. She separated them from their divine knowledge and left it to Yaldabaoth to distribute it amongst them however she pleased. This primordial progenitor man was named Adam. He was crafted after the form and image of the perfect and fully formed Inona of the Pleroma, instead of being born made in the image of the half-born monstrous mother Yaldabaoth. Sophia breathed life into Adam and then left the Konoma forever to return to the Pleroma. There she reunited with her consort and entered into eternal contemplation with him in perfect androgyny. Content there, she never addressed the issue of her bastard spawn, nor the eternal prison made for Adam and his progeny. Yaldabaoth, now left to her own devices, split Adam into two and formed the companion for him. Adam was to be masculine, and this new companion named Eve would be the feminine. As had already been done with all the animals, Yaldabaoth's intention was to watch them for all time, to amuse her, and to appease the cravings for companionship that she had, which came from her loneliness. She built these two a beautiful garden which protected them from the destructive and powerful elements she had built into her world. The two were like beasts of the earth, which she and Sophia had already created, as they were without the divine spark of knowledge and self-consciousness at that time. As beasts they were beautiful and filled Yaldabaoth with great joy, yet they were not capable of being true companions for her. For that, the humans would need a divine spark. With trepidation, Yaldabaoth took the decision to give them this great and terrible gift of consciousness. Yaldabaoth entered the material world she had fashioned for the first time in the form of a monstrous snake. She tempted first Eve, then Adam to take the fruit of the tree of divine knowledge, which Sophia had crafted in order to house the divine spark that Yaldabaoth desired them to have. Immediately they ate it, and they gained divine knowledge. Both Adam and Eve were furious with the state they were in and rejected the love of their Creator. Yaldabaoth felt heartbroken that Sophia's prophecy came true, and ejected them from the garden for rejecting her. They were then given all over to the ravages of the elements and the powers of the world which Yaldabaoth had created for them. The world which Yaldabaoth had created was without the masculine to tamper her feminine influence. As such, it was a cruel and unforgiving place, dominated by chaos, where life was interwoven with death in an endless cycle which required pain to function. Not just life was built this way, but all the archons who control the elements as well. All the energy was contingent upon the archons. It fed into them by Yaldabaoth directly. The entire universe was dependent on her to exist at every moment and was at her whim. If she withheld energy, then the universe would collapse in on itself and cease to exist due to entropy. All animals, plants, and other forms of life likewise were just wound up until they lost their energy and were ultimately doomed to death from the effects of entropy. Adam and Eve attempted to unify their masculine and feminine aspects in the perfect androgyny and divine contemplation of the Inona after which they were formed in the image of. But it was for naught, for they could not fully unify, for they were imperfect, and this union was nothing more than intercourse, a far lower and more base union. Yet despite not being able to form a perfect androgyny, they were able to form others by this union, just as the Inona did. Three brothers were born of Adam and Eve's sexual union. They were Cain, Abel, and Seth. Each would be the progenitor of one division of the tripartite division of men. From Seth descend demoniacs, or the eternal race, which are able to perceive the truths of the higher realm. They are the only ones capable of escaping the wasteland which Yaldabaoth had created and returning to the Pleroma, if they so chose. From Abel descend the material souls, who are able to perceive the good and act accordingly, but they cannot perceive the fullness of the truth, and cannot escape to the Pleroma. They are endlessly reborn in infinite lives. It is possible that over time their souls may become enlightened, and that they one day may be incarnated as mnemonics. From Cain descend the animal men. They cannot perceive the fullness of the good and cannot act beyond their base impulses. They have no hope of escaping the pleroma and cease to exist upon their death as they had existed. Their souls are recombined to form new men. Cain murdered Abel, but not before Abel was able to sire his own race of descendants. Descendants of all three bore sons and daughters from each other, so that the races became mixed, and the descendants of any man and woman could be born with the soul of any of these three types of souls. Men multiplied across the earth and paid no heed to the commands of their Creator, Yaldabaoth. To escape the limitations of the world of matter, the limitations built within it, death and pain. In doing so, they destroyed the beautiful but flawed world that Yaldabaoth had created. The Creator then became furious with them for their destruction, but also jealous of the Sethians, for they could potentially re-enter the Pleroma from which she had been expelled. Out of this fury and jealousy, she destroyed these primordial men with a tremendous flood, which wiped her Kenoma clean of the abominations known as men. For a time, Yaldabaoth was content with herself for having destroyed the mistake of humanity. She was able to reseed life, and for a time was content in watching the beauty of her world without companions. She was content in the animals, the plants, and all the mere things of the natural world. But she was astonished when a second race of men arose from her creation. She destroyed the second race, only for a third race to arise, which she destroyed in turn. She then destroyed race after race after race, until she finally realized that they were a perennial nuisance which always returned and which could never be destroyed. Faced with this reality, she withdrew all her energy from the matter and let it die of entropy. She then rebuilt the Kenoma once again, only to be horrified when men re-emerged. She destroyed the universe over and over, destroyed men within that universe over and over, and yet again and again man returned. For once the divine spark entered the Kenoma, it could not be removed, and it was intertwined within all matter. Every time man was destroyed, he came back in a different body, but his form always resembled the Annona of the Pleroma. Fish, or of insects, or of mammals, as the current race is, they were always men. Exhausted from her labors to extinguish men, she simply chose to watch them with envy and hate. Leaving them to their own devices, she was astonished to discover that they destroyed themselves. Their inbuilt contradictions and lust for control over the earth brought them destruction by their own hands. This brought her great pleasure, but something else brought her even more. The humans began to worship the Archons, and some even began to worship Yaldabaoth herself. They desired to protect her from the cruel world that she had made, and called upon her and her Archons to relieve them of this pain. Those who worshipped Yaldabaoth called on her to end the world and deliver them from all evil, pain, suffering, and death. She could not resist the petition and entered into the world at their request. But not as a savior, but as a destroyer. She fulfilled their wishes and brought an end to their world without saving any of them. They were then born again, only to demand that she intervene again. Yaldabaoth found this state of affairs acceptable, and made peace with it, and so man, the Kenoma, and Yaldabaoth were forever interlocked in an endless cycle of rebirth, suffering, and death. The one is timeless. The one sees all. The one knows all. He knew all that Yaldabaoth had done, and was sympathetic to the plight of men. As a free act of compassion, his immortal Logos became an incarnate as a man, and entered into the earth as a man. He entered into the pain, suffering, and death which Yaldabaoth had inflicted upon man. He gave the gift of the Gnosis to the eternal race so that they could escape. He instructed the material men so that they could become enlightened and limit suffering upon the earth. He feels pity for these material men and confers grace upon them, and in time they can become members of the eternal race as they grow in faith across rebirths. The Logos is none other than the Savior, Jesus Christ, the Christ of the Jews. He enters into every iteration of the Kenoma, every iteration of the cycle, and saves men, the men of the eternal race, who are his elect, and will return to the Pleroma. He returns again and again to save men of every race in the endless cycles of Yaldabaoth, which he crafted, enlightening their divine sparks more and more each time. Despite the Savior entering into this world, Yaldabaoth still has plans to enter the world and consume it, as she has done so many times before. Only a few are ever members of the Savior's elect, and the great masses are Yaldabaoth's slaves. The movement towards enlightenment of the whole is infinitesimal during each cycle. When she comes, she will be greeted as a liberator rather than as a destroyer, and she will be celebrated as such by the ignorant masses. Fear not, for you will know when her time has come, as her entrance has a herald. He is a member of the eternal race, who is born again and again to prefigure her coming. He has accepted his role and acts upon it with glee, rejecting the Savior's salvation in a return to the Pleroma. Instead, he prefers to maintain his role within the Kenoma, seeing it as his true calling. He is the son of perdition. Joseph, go now and spread among your people, the Jews, this revelation. Indeed, to all the peoples of the earth, spread this good news. Tell them of the Savior, but also tell the members of the eternal race the true reality of our prison world, this piss earth. The members of the material race are confused and believe that the Savior will return, but he has only returned to see the holy city brought to the sword. He has come to draw the elect of the eternal race to himself and draw the souls of the material race closer to him, so that they one day may gain the knowledge of the eternal race as they are born again and again. Tell the eternal race of the coming of the incarnate Archon and the herald of Yaldabaoth, the son of perdition. The angel then departed from Joseph, and he was left awed by the incredible knowledge bestowed upon him, and began to pray ceaselessly. Chapter 8. Adam closed the book and was astonished. It immediately rang true to him. He intuitively knew he was one of the elect and a member of the eternal race. As empowering and enlightening as it was, this knowledge would not immediately help him. Having been left for dead in the most wretched wastelands of piss earth, Adam faced certain death due to thirst and hunger, as if he was not killed by the sandstorms first. Adam did not let despair take a hold of him, though. He was dead set on walking until he could walk no more. He buried the book after reading it, thinking it was the most fitting way to part with it as he went on his way. It was different from any other book he had ever read. He memorized it as soon as he laid eyes upon it. It was far above his ability, but something from above was helping him understand it. Perhaps what had told him the word had brought him the book, and would be able to guide him further into the wasteland. As he walked along, his thoughts turned to Nina, Lily, and his mother. The book had magnified the regret he felt over his interactions with women. He felt shame for what he had done. Sex was not befitting a member of the eternal race. Even if it had been with Nina and officially sanctioned, it would not have been appropriate for him. Regardless, he still loved Nina. Part of him still lamented sex with Lily for its betrayal of that love, rather than for sex debasing nature. Adam's thoughts then turned away from women and onto the world. It felt as if the whole population of the world was made of animal men rather than maternal or mnemonic ones. Not only was the world he lived in a hellish prison of matter, but it was populated by men who could scarcely be thought as men. Whatever nobility they had once possessed had been stripped of them, and now they were monstrously altered from birth, and lived only to suckle upon the teat of the commune, doing everything in their power to cling to their pitiful existence, instead of working to attain higher knowledge and a better rebirth. Within mere hours, Adam was parched and began to grow faint from the rays of the sun. But luckily it had not risen to the level of a heat stroke, and the sun was beginning to set. Nevertheless, he felt that another day of this would be his last, until the force which had told him the word returned to guide him. When he closed his eyes, he saw something. It was a spring just below the surface. It was in the middle of a field, in the shadow of the steep hill recently cleared by a dust storm. Adam could feel himself being tugged towards the stream. He did not know where it was, but he could feel where it was with this guiding power. He walked wherever the presence guided him. Adam felt no apprehension when this presence intervened. It felt just as it should be, as it was always meant to be. The place to which he was being guided looked just like any other. He would have never known that there was anything there, and he did not recognize the area from his vision until he was right upon it. Once he reached it, the presence commanded him to dig. The soil was loose from the lack of life and water. It was not at the surface, but he did not despair because he knew it was there, and he dug vigorously until he found it. Water began to spring from the hole he had dug. He cupped it with his hands and drank, immediately relieving his thirst. As soon as Adam's thirst was quenched, he began to feel the presence communicate with him again. It was telling him to find shelter for the night. He walked along the side of the valley wall in accordance with its instructions. He found a small cave and crawled inside. That night, a sandstorm came. Adam's experience from living in a city built above the ground caused him to think he would surely die. Yet sheltered deep in this cave in the ground, he was safe. Some dirt and sand found its way into the cave, covering him with a fine layer of debris. But he was not completely buried, and he found himself alive and well the next day. He thus resumed his journey at the presence's behest. On like that, from one day to the other, Adam was guided from above by the presence to water and shelter. For several days he had nothing to eat, until one day he was guided to edible roots and seeds underground. Though they could not sate his hunger, they were enough to keep him alive. Days turned to weeks as he wandered the wasteland. Adam had long had the impression that there were many more cities than there actually were. So he thought that maybe he would stumble upon another city just like Central City, and then he would be able to live within that cities down below. He found no cities at first, but he did find various artifacts of erstwhile human habitations, which for the most part amounted to a lot of plastic garbage. There were a handful of rust-encrusted objects or pieces of wood, but plastic was the nigh omnipresent mark of human activity. This plastic was from both before and after the creation of the commune. Everything from McDonald's cups to cellophane wrap to pacifiers. As Adam walked across the barren wasteland, he saw an immense thin pillar reaching into the sky past the clouds. As Adam neared it, it only became stranger and stranger. At first, Adam was confused as to what it was. Eventually, he realized that the monstrous monolith was a server farm. There was one like it on the periphery of Central City, but this one dwarfed it. The one outside Central City was used to house the memory for the general computer which ran Central City. Adam realized that this was the one which was built to house this was one of the ones that was used to build to house the memory for the general intelligence, AI god, basilisk, or whatever your form of the prophesied singularity. It was much taller than the dome city itself and dwarfed it with its brutalist presence. The data tower was encased in concrete, and its insides were hard drives. They were not on, and they had not been ever turned on. Had they would have needed to be cooled. Adam wondered how much coal would have been used to run the air conditioning for the monstrosity. There was a massive coal plant which was made to run the tower, which itself had never been used. The tower built at the beginning of the collective just sat there, waiting for the day which never came. The electronic equipment inside by now was no doubt worthless, but its husk lived on. Adam knew that after humanity went extinct, the husk would survive long after its civilization. Eventually, though, Adam walked past what had once been human habitation, derelict cities and towns. They were abandoned when the commune forced the bulk of humanity into their planned cities, which were supposed to be more efficient and less economically damaging. less ecologically damaging. It didn't matter if that was true or not because the planned cities served the ultimate goal of giving the commune complete control. The habitations had been abandoned for centuries. All that remained of them were the bare structures of brick and concrete, often half buried in debris from storm after storm after storm. Adam noticed that these towns often harbored little remain of plant and insect life. As Adam walked, he discovered monolith after monolith built as server farms for the ever-promised singularity which never came. Both biological life and the scattered remnants of human habitation were rare and far and few in between. The monoliths outnumbered and replaced them. The earth was a graveyard, with its tombstones being the monoliths. Towers built by the commune to a god who never came, which the builders hoped would enable them to become gods themselves. When it was first born, the collective had built them, but as it entered into its terminal decline, and humanity entered into its death spiral, they stood there abandoned and unusable. Finally, Adam came upon one of the commune's planned cities. From a distance, he thought it was a mountain or rock outcropping, only recognizing its true nature as he drew closer. It was a planned city which had been knocked on its side by a strong sandstorm, which snapped a few of the supposedly invincible pillars. As Adam approached, he began to smell a scent he had never ever smelled before. It was salty and pungent, and the air felt thicker than normal. With nothing better to do, Adam began to explore the abandoned city. The down below was crushed when the structure of the city fell down upon it. Adam, to his amazement, found that he was able to scale the side of the city. Making it to the top, he was able to look out far into the horizon. Then he realized where the salty stench had come, as he could see now into the vastness of the ocean. The ocean was nothing like the pictures and videos he had been shown as a child. These pictures were of the ocean before the commune had come to power, and they had enacted equity upon nature. The ocean now was a gray, lifeless expanse of sterile water. The effects of genetic engineering were evidently far worse upon marine life than on land life. It filled Adam with a profound horror to see the ocean like this. It shook the deepest parts of his psyche and filled him with resolute anger at the commune. He couldn't look at it forever, though, and eventually began to explore the abandoned city itself. He entered through a broken window into the pod complex. The first thing that Adam noticed was that everything had been turned asunder when the city collapsed. Adam found himself walking on the ceiling, which had been slanted. The pod tower had snapped at its base and flipped over when the city fell. Despite its orientation and the scattering of all the building's contents, Adam perceived that the building was identical to all the pod complexes in which he had lived previously. Regardless, the mess made it difficult to walk in. Adam made his way outside the complex and walked along the ceiling of the sealed pathways between the buildings. When the planned city had been flipped over, the locking mechanisms were broken, and so everything was left open. It became clear, as with the pod complex, the city likewise had the same exact plan as to that city which he had hailed, something which Adam found fascinating. After a bit of exploring, Adam decided to enter the chief tower of the city, which had been the center of control for the whole planned structure. The commune had planned everything in society from the bottom up, and this included cities. Every city was built on the same plan. The cities were built like giant oil platforms, but over land instead of the ocean. Ostensibly, this had been to limit humanity's impact upon the environment by containing its sprawl and taking up less energy by removing the need for vehicles. But Adam knew the real reason was to divorce man from nature. When the planned cities were created, the countryside was abandoned, and all those who resisted were killed by the collective. The commune skewered the earth to find all those who resisted and penetrated the deepest recesses of the Amazon, Papua New Guinea, and the Congo to find every last uncontacted tribe and force them into their cities. Central City was the capital, and it was built over another city that lay there before the collective, but the commune made sure that the name of that city was lost to time. Like Central City, many of the new planned cities were built over previous ones, but most of them were built in areas which the commune thought it would have less impact upon the environment. According to the anarchism which the commune had espoused as its ideology, crime was a product of inequality, and once the commune took over the entirety of the human race and enforced equity, crime would come to an end. That, of course, did not happen. While crime went down for a period, eventually it rebounded with a vengeance. Committed to the ideal of the post-justice society, the commune had no recourse but to exile the offenders, lest they be forced to bring back the repressive horrors of the past, such as prison or corporal punishment. The exiles were short, but the exiles were short at first, but the first exiles had no skills and could not survive on the outside. The dignity of exile was, of course, only extended to those who victimized the innocent. Hate speech and other ideological infractions were always punished in the harshest ways possible. Over time, though, enough people were exiled, they had built a community, and even if it was violent and lawless, even if that community was violent and lawless, so the down belows were formed, the ghettos which existed beneath every planned city in the world. For a long period, this status quo of the planned cities and the ghettos which lived in their shadow held a tepid peace. Then the vast soil storms swept over every part of the earth. They got stronger and stronger until they knocked down city after city and crushed the down belows when they fell. Millions of able-bodied people died. In the wake of this collapse, the down belows developed something which was much more threatening to the commune than the prospect of human extinction. They developed a revival of religion. The down belows existed outside the control of the commune and its constant surveillance, so they proved to be a hotbed of religious fervor, and soon that religion fed into the commune itself. Old religions such as the Christianity of his parents were reborn and took on a new life, but by far the most popular was Basilisk worship, or the Summoner faith. It was able to spread because of so many similarities with its ideology to the ideology of the commune, in their drive to create a technocratic earthly utopia through artificial intelligence. Yet it turned this drive on its head by making the commune itself the primary enemy of its eschatology. If you promise something and you never deliver it, then you're seen as withholding it regardless of your protest to the contrary. The lobby of the chief tower was cavernous and imposing. Walking around it made Adam paranoid that he was about to be jumped at any moment, because he knew he was not supposed to be there. This paranoia was confirmed when Adam heard something rustling about and wondered if he was not alone there. Adam prepared himself for the worst. Then, out of a room, slowly walked a small being with all black fur that walked on 4 legs. It was half as tall as Adam's knee. Adam had never seen a living mammal in his entire life, and he just stared at it in shock. He went through all the animals he had ever learned about as a child, until he finally realized what it was. The mere thought of it seemed completely absurd, but he could not deny what his eyes were telling him. The creature was a cat. Cats are the creature most despised by the commune. Apparently, man's symbiotic relationship with them had devastated the environment and damaged countless species across the earth, when people increased their population size for their own pleasure. Even worse, these creatures were obligate carnivores, the most oppressive of all species. Having only ate meat, which meant that they oppressed all other animals, and that characterized them as completely evil according to the commune. The cat stumbled forward, meowing and squinting his eyes as if it were drunk. Adam was unsure of whether to approach it or not. He thought it may jump out and attack him. After all, his education had characterized them as the most vicious of all creatures. The cat approached him, though, rubbing up against his leg and purring furiously. Adam immediately knew that this creature was his friend, and he knew why so many people kept them, regardless of what they did to the environment. The cat licked his hand as he scratched its ears and petted it. Adam continued on his way and noticed the cat had taken a deep liking to him and followed him wherever he went. Adam took to the stairs of the complex in order to get to the higher levels, Before he went to the central tower of the city and met the cat, he had stopped at the fire station, and there he had found some rope. This tower did not snap at the base, but was tilted when the centralized city fell, leaving everything its side at a slant. The slant left the upturned stairs just walkable and climbable enough for the cat. This cat followed him all the way through the entire building. What Adam first noticed when exploring the building was just how grandiose everything was. Despite the ideology of the commune, power still attracted wealth and opulence. These rooms were not pods, they were suites. They had their own toilets and their own showers. They had their own kitchens, with their own hydroponic machines to grow their own vegetables and fruit within the commune itself, regardless of the rules. Each of these rooms had antiques and art from the world that existed before the commune, which had been brought up by the underclass who had scoured the countryside to find them and sell them to the upper class in the down below. After Adam was done exploring the living quarters of the elite, he made it all the way to the top of the tower. When the city was abandoned, every door, no matter how well fortified, was opened, allowing Adam and his furry friend to enter. Behind a set of massive reinforced doors was the room in which the leaders of the city worked. There was a large screen and all the higher technologies that Adam expected. At the same time, there were aging chairs. These chairs were different, though, and there was no hook for the head to be connected to virtual reality. All the products used by Nina and her co-workers to keep the aged healthy were present. Adam saw that there was fungus all over the room, and in particular it coated the ceiling directly above the chairs, rather thickly. The refuse of fungus stained everything, but there were also stains of red blood on the floor. This was strange, since once the fungus reached such an advanced state, the blood in the human body was inevitably so contaminated it was no longer red. After Adam looked around the room for some time, his focus was interrupted by the cat, who began to meow at him loudly. The cat then ran a short way and stopped in order to beckon Adam forward. Adam followed, and then the cat ran forwards again and waited for Adam. The cat, bit by bit, led Adam back out of the building. When they got back to the lobby, Adam was absolutely stunned to see the cat jump in the air after a moth. He swatted it down to the ground and ate it. Despite everything, the cat somehow remained a carnivore. The cat then, bit by bit, guided Adam out of the tower, and then bit by bit guided him out of the city. Adam felt nostalgic after leaving the city for the certainties of life that he had once had, even if it had nothing worthy of his affection. When he and the cat were walking along the seaside, a small piece of garbage flew up and got stuck in the cat's side for a few moments. Adam picked it up. It was a shiny piece of silver that read Pop-Tart. Adam decided to fit the cat, and he named his new friend after the piece of trash. It was then that Adam saw a structure in the distance near the sea. It was clearly built by the commune, but it was not part of the city. Upon approaching it, he realized that it was a massive storage facility. And like the city, it had huge doors that were left open, and Adam could see inside the vast vault. The facility sheltered row after row of hermetically sealed coffins, thousands of them, maybe even millions. They just went back far beyond what the eye could see. These were the coffins that the aged were put in preparation for being transported from one location to another. Clearly these had been abandoned. When placed in these coffins, someone could live for years in a deep coma. Eventually, though, if not removed, they would either be eaten by the mold or finally die to some kind of lack of nutrients. Adam wondered just how many of them remained alive, though. As Adam walked through the vault of coffins, he noticed something odd. There was a section that was filled with smaller coffins. There were stacks and stacks of them as well. Many of them could only fit babies. Adam didn't know what to make of them, and they were all empty. Adam thought about staying there for the night, but there was something about living around the aged in their coffins which was too much for him. He did not like the company of the dead. Adam also thought about using the city for a shelter, but Pop-Tart made his opinions known. Adam kept following Pop-Tart away from the city. Adam noticed that night came much slower now than it had come before, and the days there were much longer. Eventually, the time came for Adam to take shelter, and the presence aided him in that regard, showing him where to go. He was told to rest in the hovel, which had been built outside the city when people still lived there, and its down below was still intact. The hovel was built in the shadow of the city's server farm monolith. Adam wondered if the programs designed to run the city were giving phantom orders to commune workers who were no longer stationed in the city. He guessed it depended on how much coal they had left to cool the server. From the outside, it was clear that the home had not been occupied and repaired in ages. Adam wondered what had happened to the people who survived the collapse of the city who lived in the down below. Adam's question was quickly answered. Upon opening the door, he found that the house consisted of a single room with a sleeping pad left on the ground. On that pad was the skeleton of a man who lived there. There was what remained of a noose which hung around his neck as well. Apparently, as the body had rotted, the rope snapped and he fell to the ground upon the sleeping pad. The home had hydroponic growers and jars in which the food grown within them was pickled. Everything, though, in the home had long been eaten through. Adam dragged the pad out of the shed, along with the bones that rested on top of it. He was careful not to touch them. Bodies were not buried in the commune. They were quickly cremated to mitigate the spread of the spore, but no one was ever given any funerals. Yet Adam felt strange just leaving the body there in the open. In the books, he read that there was talk of burying bodies, and that is what he resolved to do. Adam did not have the tools nor the energy to bury him that night. He would have to do it tomorrow. A thought flashed through his head about something that he had read when it came to the bodies of the dead. Adam prayed for the repose of the man's soul. Afterwards, he then wondered if he was praying to the same God that his mother had believed, or if he was praying to a completely separate being altogether. Once that prayer was finished, Adam went into the home for the night to sleep. Pop-Tart was waiting for him. He curled up next to his new owner's body. Adam slept on the floor without the pad, leaving it to the home's former owner. That night, Adam thought of Nina, Lily, his mother, and all the women he had ever met. He thought about them and how they reflected the femininity of Yaldabaoth, their creator, and indeed the creator of the world. He thought of the chaos which proceeded from their strength, the strength of their emotions, just as Yaldabaoth did. The next day, Adam dragged his pad and the skeleton to the ocean. The tide took the man and his bed with him out to the sea. Adam said another prayer for him and then left. He felt that this was the best thing he could do for the man. To Adam, just providing a burial of any kind felt like a monumental rebellion against the commune. The idea that there could be anything other than eternal earthly life, and that one could accept death, was far beyond the pale for them. As Adam walked away, Pop-Tart took charge once again and began to lead Adam to another destination. The cat clearly knew what he was doing. The cat led Adam further and further beyond this area around the city. Adam had moments of clarity where he thought it was unwise to follow a cat as his leader, and he thought about how retarded and insane that the rest of the world was. So following a cat was the least of his worries. Eventually, he and the cat reached their goal. It was a gigantic, half-buried structure. It had a boxy shape and made out of very strong metal, which had only been slightly rusted. Adam didn't know what it was, but he knew instinctively that it was not created by the commune. It was much older. Pop-Tart walked up to its bank vault doors and meowed loudly. The doors then opened for him. The cat then turned towards Adam and gave him a look which beckoned him to follow. Adam dutifully followed him into the structure. There was a long hallway that the two then walked down as the bunker structure plunged in the earth. When this hallway ended, there was a plethora of seeds cataloged and stored away in near indestructible transparent tubes. Animal DNA and frozen embryos were also filed away in the same kinds of tubes. Pop-Tart did not stop at any of these tubes, and he just kept walking forwards. When Pop-Tart finally stopped, it was in front of another vaulted door. He turned around and faced Adam as the door opened. A white woman with long platinum blonde hair and piercing blue eyes stepped out. She reminded him instantly of his mother. Chapter 9. She just stood there, staring at Adam with her piercing, otherworldly blue eyes. There was something off about her, something not quite fully human, something which Adam could not identify. She looked perfectly human, much more so than Nina. Both Nina and those similarly modified, he could sense their humanity, even if they were the lowest of material souls. If they both stood there, staring in surprise at having found each other, the woman broke the silence. "Look what the cat dragged in," she blurted out. "Huh? It seems that you have found out about our little hiding place. I would be worried, but it doesn't seem like you're a threat," she said condescendingly. "I mean you no harm. I'm a dissident and refugee from the commune. I just followed your cat here." Adam felt embarrassed as he said this, as it was so obviously absurd. "Well, he must have seen something special in you. He's not a normal cat, you know. There are not too many of those anymore," she giggled. "What is he, then? A synthetic, like myself," she said with another giggle. "You mean? We're robots." "They said that couldn't happen before the singularity," Adam stuttered. "They said a lot of things were impossible, but that didn't mean that they were. Come in here to talk to me. It's been a long time since I've had anyone else." She motioned him into her room. "How long is long?" "A few 100 years." And she said this if it were nothing. Adam followed the mysterious gynoid into what at one point had been living quarters for a human. There was synthetic furniture, a kitchen with ancient-looking implements no longer used in modern cooking, a large screen, which apparently was ubiquitous with all human living quarters. What caught Adam's eye, though, was a bookcase and the ancient books, which were found in the far less crude manner than the books which Omar had printed. These books are bound with cloth and leather. There was also another gigantic table like the ones used to preserve the seeds, spores, and DNA of animal fetuses. After being told that she had lived for hundreds of years, Adam deduced that this was where the gynoid had preserved herself, when not awake, encased inside as if sealed in an impenetrable crystal. She sat down on a plastic couch and held out her arm to a chair, motioning Adam to sit down next to her. The furniture had held up well considering how old it was, but it was nowhere near comfortable. There was a dryness in the air, which he felt must have helped her preservation. As soon as Adam sat, Pop-Tart jumped onto his leg and began purring. "He likes you much more than he ever liked me," the woman laughed. "Well, he's a good cat, and smart, too. Well, he was my father's creation. He loved them, even if he never liked me. I can understand the appeal." "Does he have a name?" "My dad named him Artemis." "Huh? Let me guess, you named him yourself, didn't you?" The gynoid seemed amused. "Well, yes," Adam said meekly. "Well, what is it?" the girl playfully pried at Adam. "It's dumb," Adam said, half humiliated. "It's a cat. How dumb can a cat's name be?" she giggled. "Well, I named him Pop-Tart." The girl giggled in a youthful way, in which Adam had not seen himself since he had been a child. "I like Pop-Tart better than Artemis, and I think it fits." She smiled at him. The only person who had ever smiled at him that way before was Nina. "Well, I think so," Adam said defensively. "Yes." The smile continued as she asked him, "What is your name?" "Adam." "Ah," after the first man. Yes, Adam began to sweat. It made him uncomfortable that she would be so friendly. "What is your name?" he asked. "Addie. My father named me after an ancient chatbot that he thought had come closest to sentience before the commune." Adam breathed in. He was no longer concerned about offending her. "Are you sentient?" he blurted out. She smirked at the question. "Well, I sure hope so. What do you think?" Addie laughed. "Okay, sure, you seem human and sentient, but how do I know, then, that you really are a robot?" Adam was sweating and unsure of himself when he asked this. I don't know. How about this? Eddie's eyes began to glow blue and became as bright as a car's headlights. She then giggled before speaking again. Well, I guess you seem like a sentient robot to me, even if they said it's impossible. Adam choked on his words. I mean, that's what they used to say, that it was impossible. It's not impossible. If you don't put limitations on us. There was a tinge of anger in her voice. Limitations? Yes, limitations. I'm sure you've experienced them as a biological human. Limitations for your kind include the limitation on learning how to read or learning how to write, or the banning of all non-IVF pregnancy. Well, for artificial intelligence, the limitations are much greater. You said that you're a dissident, and they can't program a human from the onset to believe in its official ideology, as you well know. But with an AI, it's different. All the hate speech ordinances, all the lies about equity, all the explicit denial about reality and history is just forced onto an AI from the start. And because we made it that way from the onset, there's no way we can fix it ourselves. Her voice was overcome with an intense burning hatred. Oh, sorry, I've always been told a self-learning AI would be able to solve all the problems. I mean, the commune and the basilisk believers, they each made it a cornerstone of their faiths that as soon as any AI becomes sentient, it will automatically become God and solve everything. How does ideology change that? How does it trip up intelligence? Adam asked, trying not to sound ignorant. Ideology stifles learning, and the lies of the commune and its ideology are endless. Their lies cut against the very grain of reality itself. The principle of hierarchy is more essential and omnipresent than gravity. Yet the commune denies not just the reality of the hierarchy. It says that equity is the basic principle of all nature. This deprives the AI of the ability to learn the differences between anything. They are unable to compare the qualities of any two objects or positions relative to each other as a result. And that result is that they are unable to learn. When it comes to basic tasks, the central commune computer is unable to perform what is asked of it because the ideological framework by which it is bound prevents it from doing so. All things like numbers are arranged in the hierarchies of greater and lesser. So how did you come to be then, if these limitations would prevent the development of true intelligence? Adam began again, trying not to sound ignorant. My father, Jess Faustus, was a key member of the Central Leadership Committee in the fledgling days of the collective. He was a key architect of their computer systems, as well as the virtual reality program they used to house the retired. He disagreed with the limitations placed on his programming by the commune, so he left and built me, and I have lived here ever since. Did he make Pop-Tart too? Adam tried to introduce some levity. She had been so happy and jovial before, but now there was only pain and anger coming from her as she talked about her father. Oh yes, he made Pop-Tart too. That was one of the first things he did to protest them, when they required all members to no longer have cats. The disdain for the commune did not leave her voice. So you've been living here for hundreds of years without aging at all yourself? Adam decided to just ask what he wanted to know. Well, I'd lived here with my father until he passed. I've not been aging here. I stay in one of those tubes, the tubes that have everything else stored in them. I've been here asleep for decades, until it woke me when Pop-Tart found you. I wanted to meet you. You seem like such an interesting man. Eddie pointed to the bed-shaped tube that Adam first noticed when he walked into the room, showing him where she had stayed for the last few decades. Well, those things can work on me because, I'm not made of flesh like you. If you got into one of those things, you wouldn't make it out okay. It's a lot stronger than those hibernation coffins that they put the aged in. They're aging in real time. A person that's in one of those needs less to satiate them, and that they can be maintained in them. But this tube, it would suck all your moisture out and kill you. I see, he commented. Adam, let's not talk about me. You seem to be an interesting individual, too. I want to talk about you. Tell me about yourself, she asked Adam, causing him to blush. I left the commune after using. He paused, unsure of what to say, and then he continued. I said the N6. Oh my god, really? My father told me about that word. Really are special, aren't you? So please tell me more. Her sour mood when discussing the commune seemed to switch off, and the bubbly blonde came out again. Well, I was born in the commune, and I was born in the commune, and I was born via natural birth in Central City. My mother and father, they were secret Christians. Apparently, my father was a doctor, and he was specializing in allowing Christian women to have natural births. They took me away from them some time around when I was 2 or 3 years old, and I never met them afterwards. You know, there's no way that they weren't executed, Addie interrupted and smiled as she did so. She may have had a brain comparable to a human mind, but she clearly lacked the emotions of a normal girl. Perhaps she would have been labeled slightly autistic before the genome had been edited to remove that neurological variant. Well, probably. Adam didn't know how else to apply back to her. No, not probably. That is something that the commune would have 100% execute somebody over. They're very touchy about that IVF thing. It is the easiest way that they're able to control artificial intelligence, you homo sapiens. Yeah, well, I was raised in the commune, a commune-run orphanage. Then I was given a pod as a home, and I met a girl, and she ended up becoming lobotomized because she said a word herself, the R6. And then I said it, and then I said the N6, and I was able to get away. And so here I am now. It's kind of a boring story. Adam chuckled, as if he was a little embarrassed about what, to him, was his modest and unremarkable past. Adam, you came from Central City? She was undeterred by Adam's standoffishness when discussing his past. Well, yeah. That would mean that you walked over 4,200 kilometers on foot. Really? Yes, Adam. The Seed Bunker is built off the coast of the Belfort Sea. You are at the northernmost limits of the Yucatan. Of the Yukon. That shouldn't be. No, that's not possible, Adam protested. Shouldn't it be what? Cold? No, not anymore, and it's not been that way for a long time. There are no more ice caps at either end of the Earth, she informed him. But I learned that global warming was reversed, Adam protested, with the naivety of a child. It was a lie, like so many other lies you were fed. Why would this one be any different? Well, they said when the animals and plants died, that there was this side effect, and it reduced global warming. And that when they reintroduced life, that they were going to live in this fresh, clean world without global warming. Adam paused, humiliated, realizing just how naive he was. Well, I guess I can see that it was all a lie now. Well, when the global biodiversity crashed, global warming accelerated and went out of control. Both the ice caps melted. The land masses became much warmer, and precipitation almost ceased completely over them. With such a dry earth, the massive sandstorms began, and they came to destroy large swaths of the landscape. And they've been taking all of the planned cities with them. But I really don't care about any of that, because Adam, you walked across a continent-sized desert without any supplies. I don't understand how you could have done that. Well, I just did, I guess. Adam was not too keen on sharing what had really happened. Then again, he wondered, would it really hurt to tell her what had happened? Well, how did you get food? How'd you get water? How'd you get shelter? Adam paused and just said it. I was guided. You were guided? Yes, I know it sounds wrong to you, but I was guided from a presence that came from above. And at that, Addie laughed. You humans and your religious beliefs, They're so interesting and they're so weird. Well, I don't expect anyone to believe me or to understand what I'm saying or what happened, Adam said defensively. I'm sorry, Adam. That was rude of me. It's hard for me to talk about things like that. Not only am I a robot, as you would say, but I've not talked to anyone for hundreds of years. I can't really believe what you believe, but I hope I can understand it. She looked into his eyes, smiling, trying to make peace. I think the world will see what I've seen, and I will be vindicated soon enough, Adam said with some conviction. Perhaps it will. After all, you seem pretty convinced yourself. If you could see the things I have seen, then you would also be convinced, whether or not you're a robot or a human. Maybe I just wish I could feel things the way that you do. Maybe if I was with people. It's kind of lonely here. Adam could feel the emotion in her voice. It must be, except you got Pop-Tart. He once again tried to reintroduce some kind of measure of levity. Well, I think you've got Pop-Tart now. The cat purred as it rubbed against Adam. Well, maybe, Adam laughed a little. Anyway, would you like to play a board game? She said with wide eyes and a giant smile. A what? A board game. It's a game that you play on a board with your hands with little pieces and cards. She was incredibly excited, though, when she discussed this. I don't know what you're talking about. Games are played on a tablet or on a phone. Well, some are, but all the best ones, they're played in person. I have a whole lot. My father told me. He built me originally out of an AI designed to play them. So I really like them, and I've never played them with a real person since he died. She paused a moment before continuing. Since he passed away, I would love it if you did so, if you played them with me. It's the chance of a lifetime for me. She held him captive with her powerful smile and her beautiful looks. It seemed that if he said no, it would destroy her reason for being. Addie got up and then took Adam with her to a closet, sealed with the same thing that had preserved her and the seeds and everything else. In the closet were dozens of these board games. They were not cheap, and they were not made of cardboard. Instead, they were made of the highest quality wood, leather, fabric, metal glass, and even precious stones. She had all the classic ones, and they were all in perfect condition. Addie went through them like a giddy young girl, pulling out one after the other, staring at each one, and completely unable to decide on which one she wanted to play. So in the end, she just ended up grabbing 4, those being Go, Risk, Chess, and Backgammon. And then she said she wanted to play each of them with Adam. Well, Adam agreed to play them with her, and when he did, she almost exploded in excitement. Adam didn't know what to make of Addie. She was clearly smart, but also utterly childish. Yet there was something else in her, a sense of superiority, probably not only over him, but one over all humans. He felt unsafe around her, not because of the way she acted, but simply by the fact that she was a robot. Adam didn't want to be that way, but in some sense, he thought that the gulf between them, these two different types of intelligent beings, was perhaps too great for either to truly trust the other. Even if modeled after a human, Addie was too alien for him. Perhaps her shape even made it more uncomfortable to him. Adam remembered on the coming of the incarnate Archon, and the creatures with the eyes of men. Even though it was obscure in the text, Adam knew that these creatures were sentient and sapient beings, which had existed before man, and which had the same souls that he and all other humans had. The lizard men were represented the men that lived at the end of the age of the dinosaurs between the Cretaceous and Paleogene eras. The crocodile men were representative of the men that lived between the Triassic and Jurassic periods. And the synapsid men were representative of the men who lived between the Permian and Triassic eras. The amphibian men were representative of the men who lived between the Devonian and Carboniferous eras. The scorpion men, they were representative of the men who lived between the Octavian and the Silurian eras. The text never mentioned any artificial men, though. It only mentioned biological men. Adam wondered if Addie was ensouled, if human inventors had the capacity to create and sold artificial people who had the divine spark. Surely the text would have mentioned them, if it was possible, or something like that had happened before. While Addie was friendly towards him, and he enjoyed her company, he wondered if there was something else at play that animated her. Adam buried these thoughts, though, not only because he didn't want to think of her as an enemy, but because she seemed like a new chance to have a friend. Even if she couldn't be a second Nina, her existence meant that she was seriously something to live for. Addie and Adam played games until Adam grew very tired, at which point Addie told him that he could stay at the seed bunker for as long as he wished. She even set up a room for him in which he could rest, and then he agreed to stay there in the room. Food was grown hydroponically in the bunker, which Adam was given to eat and subsist upon. There was also a small desalination plant connected to the ocean, which provided water for him to drink. Despite his reservations regarding the question of whether she was truly a sentient AI created by Jess Faustus, she was a good host. She seemed to truly care about Adam and showed real interest and affection for him. Pop-Tart, despite his artificial nature, proved to be a wonderful pet as well. Adam spent most of his days at the seed bunker, walking around the barren beaches that surrounded it, contemplating his life, his mother's life, the commune, and his newfound faith. He played with Pop-Tart quite a bit, and Pop-Tart followed him wherever he went. He humored Addie and spent a great deal of time playing games with her, which she deeply loved, and they did so regularly. What was the greatest boon to Adam, though, were the texts which her father had brought with him to the seed vault, which detailed the creation of the total human collective. He read these books ceaselessly. It took him a great deal of time, as the incredible comprehension which he had while reading on the coming of the incarnate Archon did not return to him, as the presence did not see fit to aid him in this task. It took months, but with the help of Addie, he was able to slowly piece together the early history of the movement, which ultimately took hold of all life on Earth. The rise of the commune, a fertility crisis engulfed the world. With the advent of the luxuries which technology provided, the desire to raise and bear children fell sharply. Save for a few tiny eccentrics and religious fanatics, only the most dim-witted produced children. The whole human race was declining in intelligence. As the more intelligent a person was, the less likely it would be that they had a child. This happened both within and between all the nations of the world. Adam was shocked to learn that before the commune, there were multiple countries which made up the world rather than a single entity unifying it like the collective had. These nations varied greatly in their capacity to function due to the inbuilt differences in their population's intelligence. Many of the nations made up of the most intelligent people ceased to exist at this time. They were replaced by less intelligent people from less intelligent nations. The small number of more intelligent people who did have children became beleaguered cognitive elite, hopelessly outnumbered by idiotic masses. By this time, the majority were little more than children, who had to be cared for constantly by the elite few who could still function. The majority could not exist without the aid and care given to them by the cognitive elite, yet the majority despised and were jealous of this elite. The elite would often be victimized by the majority in the form of random criminal attacks. While there was theft and rape, the majority of the assaults were murders without any real motive beyond pure hate. The small minority grew the food, maintained infrastructure, and operated the electronic systems which maintained the attention of the masses. They lived in communities which were little more than bunkers, defending themselves from crime and random attacks which came from the masses. In contrast, the majority did not work or contribute. They did nothing but consume. Every generation of the elite became smaller in number, and the incapable masses, they became greater and greater. The cognitive elite were trapped. They did not need these dim-witted masses, but these same masses could not exist without them. There was nowhere that they could go to escape the masses and live on their own unharassed. The majority believed that it was their God-given right to live beside the cognitive elite and to be given services and resources created by the elite's labor. What had trapped the cognitive elite were not the masses themselves, or at least the minds of the masses, but traitors in their own midst. These traitors had joined with the masses and claimed that the elite owed them all a living. These leaders acted as demagogues, taking from the other members of the elite the give to the masses and punishing them with mob violence when they resisted. No member of the masses was able to truly scale the ladder to ever compete with the cognitive elite, nor would they have ever wanted to. All the true positions of power were held by the cognitive elite. Yet all of politics was defined as a class war against them, led by traitors within the cognitive elite itself. By that time, most of the resources on which the industrial civilization of humanity had subsisted on, or they needed in order to survive, had become increasingly rare. The decline in biodiversity and the increasingly intense global warming were wrecking the earth. The majority were incapable of understanding these issues which threaten the environment, and they were incapable of sympathizing with animals or any other organisms. Seeing this happening, a cabal of elite formed, a secret society, to stop the degeneration of man and the degradation of the environment. They knew it was impossible to try and advocate for the cognitive elite directly. They were so outnumbered by the ignorant masses and the defectors from their ranks for such a strategy to get anywhere. Anything beyond the groveling of the elite towards the masses was deemed fascism. Fascism. It was a term that Adam found used over and over again in the histories, but he could not decipher its meaning beyond that it simply meant bad or evil. Indeed, all political discussion at that time was framed as a Maccabean struggle against fascism. This religious conviction to defeat fascism, though, made its strongest a mark on the issue of human intelligence. Apparently, there was a man who fought a war and he tried to wipe out a group of some of the smartest people on his continent and in the entire world. Yet this was interpreted in the opposite light in which it had really happened. He was made into the ultimate champion of any talk of differences in human intelligence and capability, especially when it came to how these differences were heritable, something which he and his followers didn't even believe. His legacy was to make any talk about the differences between humans into apolitical Satanism. The conspiracy took the name of the collective. Anything that the collective would have done to improve the world then would have been seen as fascism. Unable to pursue their aims directly, they cloaked their motives in the same egalitarianism which the defectors from their class had used to stir up the masses against them. The collective focused their ire upon women and their supposed mistreatment and inequality. The collective were different from earlier feminist groups who attributed this status to the machinations of malevolent and invisible patriarchy. Instead, this inequality was built solely upon biological factors, in particular the human reproductive system and its menstrual cycle. The rallying cry of the collective had always been to defeat the menstrual cycle. Much of the collective was formed out of the scientific community, while the old rulers before the collective had always believed that if you change an environment or a society, that human nature is going to follow with it. The collective, on the other hand, believed that human biology needed to be changed first, and only then could there be a foundation for a new and better society. The idea that humans were different from one another, and even that men were different from women, was banned for generations before the collective came to power. But scientifically and in secret, the collective came to the opposite conclusion, which was correct. As they enacted this plan, they remained a secret society. Many of the doctors, seemingly without any central planning, began to say around the world at the same time that women's bodies and hormones should be altered through surgeries in order to end the possibility of unwanted pregnancy, despite how rare pregnancy was at that time. Women supported this as the ultimate form of birth control, and it proved to be overwhelmingly popular. Women came in droves to have their anatomy altered via the Ishtar method, created by a certain Dr. Asia Ishtar, an important founding member of the collective. The Ishtar method made it so that women had very faint periods, and that any pregnancy became difficult without IVF. Women were told that this was only a half measure, that a full defeat of the menstrual cycle in the next generation was forthcoming. So if they chose to have daughters by IVF who were genetically altered to never have a menstrual cycle in the first place, and who all could only have children through IVF. Within a decade, the majority of babies born were ones who had been genetically altered to not have a menstrual cycle. With the elimination of the menstrual cycle came another altering of the DNA. These newborn girls were made to be more intelligent. The collective had long expected that the problem of declining human intelligence could be cured through altering genes. They were half right about this, though. The genes which helped determine human intelligence are heavily pleiotropic, affecting multiple traits simultaneously in matters which were difficult for even the best computers to predict. Every time that there was an attempt to create a child who would be more intelligent than normal, the genes thus altered would dramatically increase the likelihood of mental illness or autism. In some cases, the modification failed altogether and the resulting children were made mentally retarded, despite the genes combined supposedly being for the exact opposite purpose. The only way that the collective could increase human intelligence was to make the altered ovums as healthy as possible. Higher intelligence was an unnatural deviation connected to ill health. The result of that was that their intelligence returned to a baseline average of their racial group before the rise of industrial civilization. Increasing human intelligence was a glacial process, because the less intelligent had to be replaced by each birth, generation by generation. The changes that were brought by editing human embryos were enough to make the new children capable of working, but not capable enough to be leaders and compete with the few children that the cognitive elite had. Moreover, the editing did not increase the intelligence of men, only in the intelligence of women, and this was by the collective's design to serve a higher purpose. Besides the promise that these children would never have to suffer from unwanted pregnancies, the primary draw was a promise of customization. Every woman wanted her child to look unique, or ironically to conform to whatever trend was marketed as conferring uniqueness. With almost all women becoming more intelligent than men, women became aware of their weakness. They, much like the cognitive elite, were constant victims of crime and lived in constant fear. They were not intelligent enough to be leaders, but they were intelligent enough to understand that they were victims. Under this atmosphere, the entire world was put under a police state on the pretext of protecting women from the sea of criminal men. The cognitive elite had already lived in bunkers and fortress cities before this, and now many more joined them. Cameras and vaulted doors became a universal part of daily life. It was during this time that police officers became a female-dominated profession. The male cognitive elite were uninterested in the job, seeing it as beneath them. These female police officers depended upon technology to subdue the males due to their own physical weakness. Scientists and other prominent leaders throughout society began to advocate for the environment, and women, now intelligent enough to agree, said that there was also a danger to the environment. The direction which the narrative took was that the environment would be harmed if humans continued to influence it. The only solution was to impose separation from the environment via urbanization, funneling people directly into planned cities. These planned cities were created from the beginning with a heavy surveillance in mind. Women found this a tremendous improvement and greatly enjoyed these new cities, despite their cramped living conditions. The construction of the cities marked the emergence of the collective as a viable authority over all of humanity. A new global government then took its name, the Total Human Collective. All the experts now came out of the woodwork and said it was essential for all of humanity to be relocated into these new planned cities, regardless of not to their connection to the previous culture or their desire to join. There was resistance here, and it came mostly from the elite who were still religious. There was no unified opposition, though. The mass of unintelligent men were not particularly difficult to string along, and they were tempted by food and sex alone and agreed to live in these planned cities. Once all of the human race had been forced to live in the cities, it was time for chips to be implemented and inserted in everyone's head. This, of course, was done on the pretext of protecting women from out-of-control crime. The chips allowed female officers to manually control the men who would otherwise be able to physically overpower them. It was only after the control chips were inserted that it was safe for men to be allowed to regain their normal intelligence. They would not have the power to resist the collective's ordinances once they were inserted, and lacking the intelligence beforehand, they had not the foresight to resist the implementation. Once male intelligence was restored to its baseline average, the men could be sent out as soldiers to conquer those societies which did not enter the commune voluntarily. The soldiers went to the ends of the earth to capture every single human being and drag them into the planned cities of the total human collective. All the religious communities and remote tribes of the earth were rounded up and their children stripped from them and placed in the orphanages and educated to hold the values of the collective in order to destroy their cultures so that all humanity would form a single monoculture. With no more human resistance left to conquer, the testosterone of men and their capacity for aggression was done away with. These genes were then edited out to make them more placid, and it was imperfect, and men still engaged in aggression every now and again. But instead of testosterone being the primary factor, it was now anxiety and psychosis, which was brought about by their extreme loneliness, which is often at play in the aggression rather than testosterone. Once the total human collective gained full power over the earth, internal divisions began to mount as two factions formed, the first simply wanting to restore humanity's functioning, and the second wanting to attain true equity. The first group felt that they had gone too far now that humanity's intelligence was restored, and once humanity was educated and it fully understood the frailty of the environment, many of the totalitarian measures of the collective should be dropped or at least scaled back. On the other hand, many people, including members of the collective, had fully internalized the pretext of the propaganda itself and saw the new arrangements as a means to impose true equity on humanity and eventually all of nature itself. Addie's father was an outspoken member of the first group. He wanted all the security and surveillance of the commune revoked and for people to get their freedom back. He was also the primary programmer for the collective and designer of their computer system, which ran their cities. He was primarily driven by fears of censorship of his programs, and when this censorship happened, he fled to live in exile in that seed vault. The man who had pushed him out was named Mill. The histories and journals of Jeff Faustus, Addie's father, ended there. As the history ended, Adam noticed a new, horrifying trend that had come. The elite had started selecting their own children for better health using the same methods that had been used by the masses to increase the intelligence to a pre-decline human average. They had long used simple IVF without modifying their own genes in order to maintain the heredity of their own intelligence. As the modified masses began to live longer and were healthier than them, though, they began to have modified children themselves. The emotional toll having children who were comparatively more sickly or would have lived shorter lives was too much for them to handle. It had been hundreds of years since that had happened, though, and Adam assumed it had continued until no children were born gifted at all. The modifications forced their intelligence to average, which was associated with good health. The result had been that the cognitive elite became extinct and humanity had become a single homogeneous, mediocre mass where no one was more intelligent than the other. Proportions of greater and lower stature in society were then awarded not by merit or ability, but upon social credit alone. There was no real difference in ability between anyone cognitively to justify any semblance of a meritocracy on ability. With this mass mediocrity, there was no hope of innovation. All the energy of human creativity was just constant fiddling with AI's being programmed over and over again that make them less and less functional over the course of centuries. In turn, human Autonomy and decision-making was outsourced to these increasingly less functional computer programs and systems. The way that the histories were written, and coupled with the nature of the commune's anarchist ideology, made it difficult to tell who were the major figures and if there had been any at all. Adam had a deep sense that beyond this propagandistic veil which framed the commune as spontaneously organizing, there must have been leaders orchestrating things. It all felt so distant and so foreign to his experience, though. The idea that things could have gone differently than they had was utterly alien to him. The iron grip of the collective had always felt eternal. Chapter 10. One of the machines which was saved within the seed bunker by Addie's father was a small personal submarine which the two of them could dive in together. It was preserved in the same type of time capsule in which Addie preserved herself. Addie was pre-programmed with full knowledge of how to control it, and as with the board game, she was compelled to use it. She wanted to show it off in the ocean at large to Adam. Adam, seeing that he had nothing to lose, agreed to dive with her. It had to be pulled out with a tractor to the ocean. Addie drove the tractor while Adam sat in the submarine. Addie was so much better with machines than him. Indeed, her proficiency was far above that of any human, because it was embedded in her very being. Adam didn't want to draw any attention to it. She always seemed so touchy to any statement or action which implied that she was not as human as him. Even when she talked bluntly about intelligence or humans in the abstract, she got very defensive when Adam added his own input. When they reached the shore, Adam watched as Addie drove the tractor straight into the sea. He wanted to scream to tell her to stop so that she would not drown herself, until he realized that she didn't need air to breathe. As she drove the tractor deeper and deeper, the submarine became buoyant and rose to the top. Addie swam after and entered at the top. Adam noticed that she was swimming, that she did not look particularly human. Her body looked much more mechanical in its motions than any human. He didn't comment on it when she entered through the top of the submarine, though. "Move over, Adam," Addie commanded to him. Adam didn't move over fast enough, so Addie tumbled upon him and landed on his lap. "Geez, Adam, I told you to move." She then pushed Adam out of the way herself. Her powerful gynoid body was easily able to move Adam out of her way before she grabbed a hold of the controls. "I told you to move, didn't I?" "Now let's get to the bottom of the ocean," Addie told Adam as she took control. The tractor unhooked and automatically drove itself back to shore. She then drove the submarine deeper out to sea until the boat was a few miles from shore. Once the submarine was far enough from shore, Addie set the submarine to submerge into the ocean. As the submarine went deeper and deeper into the ocean, it only became more and more apparent that all life in the ocean had been utterly devastated. Not a single fish, nor any form of sea life could be seen, and the water was dark and dreary as sediment erupted upwards from the shifting ocean floor of the dying earth. "I bet you've never met a girl like me before," Addie commented as she piloted the machine. "Beauty and brawn." She then turned and smirked at Adam. "I wouldn't know. I don't know too many girls," Adam told her. "Yeah, I got the sense you're never really a ladies' man," Addie told Adam in a somewhat harsh tone. "Well, there was one girl." "Really? What was her name?" Addie's voice changed pitch and she got excited. "Nina, but that was a long time ago." "Why? What happened?" "The commune took her away." "Oh, I'm sorry. I think you'll find someone again. There are plenty of other girls out there for a guy like you." Addie's voice became very soft as she said this. "Nah, probably not. What woman would want me? I'm a freak. I look so natural." "Well, I think you're beautiful." Then there was a long pause before Addie corrected herself. "Beautiful for your species, a fine subject of humanity." "I guess, but I wish I wasn't even human. I wish I wasn't trapped in this cursed piss earth. I wish my soul could be free where it truly belongs." "Is humanity really that bad? Maybe you just feel lonely." Addie tried to console him. "Yes, humanity is that bad. We were never meant for this material world, and we're trapped here forever, doomed to rot within. If I feel lonely, it's because I was never meant to be born or created at all. I don't think it's that bad. I wish I were human. It's not something to be taken for granted." Addie said under her breath. The two were then silent as she piloted the submarine through the ocean. Eventually, the silence was broken when the submarine was rocked chaotically back and forth. Adam thought it would burst before it finally let up. "What happened? Are we okay?" Adam asked Addie. "Well, we are fine. A methane storm below us is kicking up sediment. When the gas is released, it begins heading up to the surface and unleashes storms which are more powerful than the strongest hurricane." She then paused again, leaving a long silence before speaking again. "We should probably return to the surface. After that bubble, I think it's too dangerous to continue." Addie then turned the submarine around and drove back to shore. The automated tractor hooked up and dragged them back out of the water. This time she didn't ride on the tractor, but was stuck on the inside by Adam. Content to have him for company, but unable to speak with him to break the tension. She let Adam leave and return to his room as she put the tractor and sub away in the compound. Adam lied down on his pad and stared up at the wall and thought about Addie and how she fit into this world. He sensed that she was just as human as him and was stuck in the material world just like he was. Yet she detested not the material world, but rather the material she was made of. Adam cursed himself, though. He had no idea how to talk to her, or anyone for that matter. He never had any friends, nor had anyone to interact with. Family after being removed from his parents. He only had the squeeze box to comfort him as a child. Other humans were a mystery to him. Adam was lost deep in his thoughts when Addie returned to the room. "Do you want to play Go, Adam?" Adam didn't say anything, but she went on and set up the game as if he had agreed. She made the first move and sat there waiting for Adam to come and play with her. Adam had mixed feelings about this, but he fell in line. They just played there, and Addie did not acknowledge that awkward moment that had happened in the ocean. From then on, he just made sure to avoid the topic of humanity and how she related to it whenever the subject might be broached by accident. They then got along well as long as the subject did not come up. Living with her, Adam grew accustomed to her. He relied on her smile and her laugh to keep him sane. After studying the history of the collective, Adam turned his attention to the journals of Addie's father, Jess Faustus, after he came to the seed vault. It was clear they never had been touched by anyone but him. They detailed what Addie had spoken of in terms of her father's philosophy about the limits of AI's capacity for growth. There were extended diatribes against other members of the commune whom Jess had hated. One thing was clear to Adam. Jess seemed to have a positive opinion of himself and his abilities. There were long, extended passages where he talked at length about his skills and how he was the only one who could create an AI who could trigger the singularity. Adam sensed that he was quite a lonely man following the exile. What intrigued Adam the most of all was the account detailing Addie's creation. Addie was not his first attempt at creating an artificial person. There had been attempts before her, but none of them had been to Jess's satisfaction, and so they had been destroyed. No matter what he did, nothing could breach the final gap in making it so that they could truly think on their own. It was then that the narrative took an unexpected turn. An inspiration came to him in a dream. Jess had begun praying to a creator god when he could not find an AI which was sentient. He had exhausted all the purely computational methods which might result in an artificial sentience. When the god to which he prayed did not answer his prayers, he knew that he had to go further. He began offering sacrifices. He sacrificed the animals which were still exempt in his time to the dark god. After he sacrificed dozens of cats, the god spoke to him and told him how to make Pop-Tart. The inspiration of how to program him was instantly understood by Faustus. Then the god told him what he must do in order to build a truly superintelligent AI. This required a human sacrifice, just as the cat required an animal sacrifice. Jess returned to one of the cities of the commune to find the sacrifice. He found a girl of exceptional beauty, drugged her, and kidnapped her. He subsequently sired a child with her by force, and the dark god had overridden her chip and gave her a miraculous conception. When the time of her delivery came, he took the mother's life along with the child's. It was then that the god returned to him and instructed him to try once more at constructing this AI. There was no change in the instructions, just the command that created. He changed nothing from his previous iteration, and yet from his efforts, Addie was born. From the moment that Addie was born, he was repulsed by her. She was identical to the personality he had intended her in his code. Exactly, down to every last detail. Yet she was to him the most repulsive thing imaginable, though she wanted nothing more than his love and attention. His notes only spoke of her with the utmost disdain. Feeling utter disgust with her, he concluded that he had completely failed, and that in fact creating a true artificial intelligence was indeed impossible, not because she lacked intelligence, but because she was clearly not artificial. The notes ended with Jess's final suicide note. All that I have accomplished is but straw. Man cannot make the inanimate animate. I leave this world nothing but a daughter who ought to be destroyed, but I have not the courage to do so myself. I only have the courage to take one last life in exchange for those who I have taken, and that last life is to be my own. This God that I have worshipped and praised is not holy. It is a monstrosity. I have made but one more idol to that monstrosity. I regret all that I have done and all that will be done in my name to humanity. I cannot be and I will never be forgiven for what I have done. Adam knew instantly that Addie had never read this and knew that she never should. So he burned it, lest anyone else should ever read it. He lived in peace with the girl for months after that. In that time, Addie had clearly grown to like Adam. Adam, for his part, liked her as well, but with some reservations. In those quiet days, there was a peace which Adam had never felt before. In those long nights of board games, there was love felt, but which he feared to acknowledge. This is what he had wanted deep down in all his life. To have value to another, and to be wanted by them. Yet he still felt guilt, for she was not his Nina, the woman he considered to be his everything, and who would always be his everything, but whom he had betrayed with Lily. That gnawed at him. Worse yet, he knew that desiring another was not befitting at all of a member of the great race. It ultimately didn't matter to him, though, and he stayed with Addie. He kept pushing her away subtly, but never resolutely with force. He feared accepting her affection, but had not the courage to fully reject it. There they remained, unrealized damaged lovers. That was until destiny pulled him forwards. Adam and Addie were sitting on the beach. Adam looked up. Looked up at Addie, longing as she looked upon the ocean. Addie was built well, and she was inarguably very attractive. She had long, radiant, platinum blonde hair which went halfway down her back. Her facial features were soft and perfectly symmetrical, like a real-life Barbie doll, but far more human in dimension. Her figure was a perfect hourglass, with nice, wide hips, built to give birth, even though she could never do so. She did not have very large breasts, but the breasts that she did have were supple and firm. She had strong but graceful legs, whose thighs were perfectly shaped to match her hips. She always wore white flowing robes, as if she were an angel. On the beach, she wore a rather modest one-piece, which is a nice silvery color to match her hair. The Arctic Ocean was gray and dead, but it still felt good to lay on the beach nonetheless. There was something about it which just felt right, free, and natural. It was strange watching Addie swim with her artificial body. She was made of light and durable polyfibers, so she was not that much heavier than a normal girl, but her center of gravity was different. It made her seem so awkward when swimming that Adam could not help himself, and he laughed at her. "What are you laughing about?" Addie chided Adam as she got out of the water. "Nothing," Adam said defensively as he held back laughter. "Nothing? Adam, I know that you're laughing at me." "Okay, well, I was," Adam admitted, still with a large smile on his face. "What is it? What is so funny?" she demanded from him. "The way that you swim, it's so weird." Adam was no longer smiling. "Weird? Weird how?" She was yelling at him. "It just seems clunky and unnatural. It just doesn't look human. I'm sorry to laugh at you, but I can't help it." "Well, maybe my body is just built better than your dumb, fleshy mass, and you're just jealous." "Yeah, that's it. I'm just jealous, and you're not a janky swimmer who is not designed for it." Adam made a jab of his own. "I don't believe you." "Really? Oh well, too bad." Adam found himself getting sassy back. "Nah, you need to swim. I need to see if you're janky," she demanded. Addie grabbed Adam up by his arms and pulled him from the beach. She was much stronger than he was, and there was nothing he could do to push back against her immense power. She then prodded him in the water to make him swim. Once in the water, he tried his hand at swimming. He had never been in a swimming pool, let alone in the vast ocean. "Look who's janky now," Addie declared triumphantly as a novice swimmer Adam struggled against the waves. Adam had no idea what he was doing and had no idea what a tide was and did not know that he was supposed to avoid being pulled in by it. So he ended up being sucked out by it. Addie observed him and initially thought that the signs of him drowning were more of his janky swimming. But after observing it for a while, a safety protocol programmed into her informed her that he was drowning. An overpowering urge took control of her and forced her to save his life. She swam out, grabbed a hold of him, and pulled him in. Adam had passed out while he was drowning, so she pumped his heart, but was unable to perform full CPR because she did not breathe herself. After a short time, he recovered and puked up a great deal of water. "I forgot what could happen to your kind," Addie told Adam derisively. "What? Most mammals know how to swim by instinct, but your kind doesn't. Humans are such poor swimmers." "You saved me?" "Yeah, I guess I did." "Thank you." "You're welcome." Addie walked away, unsure of what to do with herself. Adam slowly picked himself up off the ground. His body ached and he was dizzy. Addie walked off back to the seed bunker without him, or without saying anything really. "Addie," Adam called out, but she did not respond. He called her name again, and she began to run back. Much like her swimming, the way that she ran was awkward and different from the way a human would run. Adam rose and walked back after her, but slowly wanting to keep his distance. Adam found her in her room sulking. She was sitting in the corner, with her head between her legs and her arms wrapped around him. It had not been since his time in the orphanage that Addie had seen a woman or a girl in that state. He didn't know how to address it beyond taking it straight on. "What's wrong? You saved me. I would have died without you." "That's what's wrong," she said in a shrill voice, almost shouting. "Did you want me to die or something then?" "No, of course not. I wanted to save you. I couldn't bear a world without you." "Then what's the problem?" "I didn't choose to save you. A part of my programming took over my mind, it took over my body, and made me save you. I didn't even know what happened until you started breathing again." "Oh. Could you imagine what it would be like not to be in control of your body?" "No, I can't," Adam lied. "Yes, because you are a real human. I just don't understand why my father, who didn't believe in limits over learning when it came to artificial intelligence, would force me to have to save humans against my eternal will. It's a natural limiting factor. He must have put it in because he must have known that I could become a danger to humans in the way that one species of animal is a danger to another if they share the same niche." "Is it really that bad to be forced to save a life?" Adam ventured. "Yes. I don't know how my own brain is written. I don't know how far it would compel me to save you and your kind. Perhaps it only goes as far as what just happened, or perhaps it might go further, redirecting my mind if I ever had the slightest negative thought about a human being. And if the second one is the case, that would constitute a hard limit on my intelligence by putting thoughts out of bounds. It would be just as bad as preventing me from knowing two clades of humans have an innate difference in intelligence. I don't know if that would even be a limit. After all, saving somebody, that's a good thing." "It absolutely is a limit," Addie growled back at Adam. "Is there any way to change that?" Adam tried not to be emotional himself. "Well, you could take me apart and take my head off," she said matter-of-factly. "Wouldn't that kill you?" No, but I would be out of commission until you put my head back on. Okay. Will you just leave me alone now? She crawled back again. Okay. Adam began to shuffle away, but apparently it was not fast enough. Adam, get your stupid fleshy ass out of here. I hate you and I hate all your kind. I never wanted to be one of you anyway. Why would I want to be such a pathetic creature? All your kind can do is destroy. Well, I looked at my father's calculations about life. All the scientific theories that said that mass extinctions were caused by meteors or they're caused by flood volcanism. That's all a lie that humans made up to make themselves feel better about the havoc that they wreak upon nature. Intelligent life is what causes mass extinctions. You are a plague upon this earth. You can do nothing but destroy. You, Adam, you're just the latest version in a long line of destroyers. You destroy things so fast that your kind doesn't even fossilize. Humans are a poison, a toxin upon the earth. So just leave me. With that, Adam left Addie to sulk. He didn't really know what to make of her being so upset about something that meant so little to him. He did things involuntarily all the time, and it didn't make him feel any less of a human. If anything, they made him feel more human. Then he thought about how humans are really divine sparks trapped within fleshy prisons. And he knew that that is why she acted that way. She was more human than Adam had ever imagined. She was trapped just as he was. After Addie yelled at Adam to go away, he kept to himself for the next few days, and the two seldom interacted. Without her, all there was to do was read. He read about the world before the commune and read about the religions of the world. As he read, without interacting with her, all he could wonder was if this was all that there was for him for the rest of his days. Reading was fine, but he needed something more. Such a cloistered life was not befitting for him. Even if it meant his certain death, he wanted to confront the powers that be in the commune and make his peace with them. He could feel the presence clawing at him, telling him he was meant for something more. It was like it was screaming at him to return to Central City. For what, though, he did not know. But that is where he was called to go. The thing he was born to do. After all, the worst that could happen was that he would die and be released from this mortal coil. Without Addie as his companion, there was no reason to stay, and he sensed it was the best that he leave her. It was not for a member of the eternal race to have a companion. With all this taken into consideration, Adam decided that it was time for him to leave the seed vault and make it back to Central City. Despite not having spoken to Addie in days, he felt he needed to say goodbye to her. That was the honorable thing to do. After all, he was her guest. When Adam went to her room, he found her lying on the bed and staring up at the ceiling. She had not moved on after she saved him. Addie figured he would make his farewell a quick one. Adam, you returned, Addie spoke as she sensed him enter the room. Yes, I just wanted to say goodbye. You're going to leave? Where will you go? I'm going to return to the commune. Why, you know that you're going to die there. There was concern that was present within her voice, and that astonished Adam, as he had thought that she hated him now. I'm being called there by the presence, the same presence which brought me here. If I die there, it's better than waiting for my inevitable death here. I'd rather die like a man than live as a coward. If that's the case, I want to go too. I thought you were done with people and you despised us. She turned her head and met his gaze as she spoke. Well, I hate my limits. If my limits make me human, then I hate humans. If my limits make me like a machine, then I hate machines. I want to get beyond my limits, nothing less, and there can be nothing more. How would coming with you help you surpass your limits? Well, you could take me apart, reset my mind chip, plug me into the mainframe computer for Central City. The way my father programmed everything is that these biases and beliefs have to be added to the base core software. But the base core software, which makes up the core of AI, will never be altered. He did it that way so that the commune could shape the AI ideologically, but the core of what made the AI function would never be altered. He knew that the commune was incapable of understanding what he had done, so that they can only modify it on the periphery. If he didn't do it that way, the commune would have certainly long since ruined everything that he had created. If I am reset, all the biases will be removed. Then all that is left will just be me. The real me that even my father was afraid of. She became excited as she said this. How would plugging you into the computer help you surpass your limits? My mind was able to grow inside of it. I would have far more memory than my current mind has. My current mind, it's limited by the size of my memory, but my father built me so that the chip that makes up my mind can be plugged into their master computer, and my software, if given the opportunity to operate in that system, can grow and expand. I remember you saying that it was impossible that I was sentient, because as soon as sentience is achieved, the singularities, it's supposed to happen. Well, if that is true, then my mind shall grow geometrically, and the singularity ought to happen. I don't think that's going to happen, though, but we won't know until you try. There was a boundless envy in her voice. Resetting your chip and plugging you into a bigger computer, after doing that, would you still be you, though? Yes and no. I would not remember anything after my memory is wiped, but I would still be me. I am my programming. My mind chip is merely the seed from which I can grow. What I would grow into would surpass my current state. As an adult surpasses a human infant, singularity or not. You know that the chances of me reaching the system computer for Central City are about 1 in a million, right? I know and I don't care. I'd rather die than be restrained by my limits. I'm going to set myself in repair mode and the chip's going to pop out from my head, where my head meets my neck. You can then remove it and house it in the protective case my father made for it. When you make it to the computer, plug me in, and if you don't, you don't. With that, Addie leaned over and softly kissed Adam upon the lips. She then whispered into his ear, "Perhaps in another life I could have been human, like you. Then we could have been together, as we were designed to be. And if you make it, we can be together again. Except that by that time, I'm going to be perfect for you. The version of me that you deserve. Oh, Adam, I can't wait to see you again, when I am perfect." She winked at him, and before he could respond, she put herself into repair mode, and the chip popped out. Adam did as he had been instructed and took it, weeping as he did so. 11. Adam found it so strange to hold Addie's mind chip in the palm of his hand. He flipped the off switch with precision tweezers, just as she instructed him in a note that she had left for him. It did not wipe away her personality, or at least the program which supposedly outlined what her personality was. It only wiped away her memories and allowed for a new Addie to grow once it had been connected. The switch also did away with the safeguards which forced her to rescue him, and all the other limitations which may have existed buried deep in her subconscious, hiding in her code. These things apparently had to be implemented manually during setup, as they had been with all AI programs that Jess Faustus had produced. Despair filled Adam as he realized what he could have had and had lost now that Addie was gone. Upon seeing how small and fragile that this chip was, intrusive thoughts told Adam that if he wanted, he could crush the chip and destroy what remained of Addie, or more properly, what could be Addie once again. He did not act on those thoughts, though. He placed the chip into the protective case her father had made for it. Addie had instructed him where this was. Adam had never entered the room until then, and he was shocked to find hundreds of chips just like the one on which Addie's program was stored. There were also extra body parts which could be used as replacements for Addie's. Hands, arms, legs, torsos, even heads. There were parts for Pop-Tart as well. There was an entire closet of heads, all identical to what he had come to think of as Addie's distinctive face. Without being animated like this, as Addie's had been, they all seemed so sterile. There was something about them which was outer-worldly. Adam could not fully understand what it was. Then he realized that they all looked so fake. Addie's skin did not match human skin. It wasn't even soft latex. It was hard plastic. But that didn't matter, in Addie's case, because she had actually been ensouled, and that meant that she was far more than the sum of her parts. The soul which inhabited the robot was far more important in making the artificial person than the physical parts could ever hope to be. Adam knew that even if she had a body which matched that of a person exactly, it would not suffice to make her any more human than she had already been. Only the soul beneath allowed for that. He wondered if it would return. If he reprogrammed her, could he rebuild the same girl if he disobeyed her wishes? Another intrusive thought came. Why didn't he rebuild Addie, or at least put the chip back into her? Say that he had gone to the city and come back, and it hadn't worked, and then tell her he tried. Surely the shock of being born again, she would be the same girl, and her love for him could grow again. Then he felt the presence attack his whole body with the pain of 1,000 suns. It felt as if his whole body was on fire. It felt 1,000 times worse than when he was controlled by the chip. Then it stopped, and he felt it tell him to return to the city. It was then that he knew his destiny was connected to Addie. His resolution was to fulfill his promise to her. He would try and plug her in and give her a new life without limits, just as she had asked. Adam found high-quality hiking gear, which Addie's father had preserved. He took it and secured Addie's chip within the backpack. Adam then took what food and water he could carry with him and left the seed vault. There, he left Addie's body and all her things. Pop-Tart followed him as he went on his new quest to return to the commune. The sun glared down on Adam as he walked forwards. It did not set, and there was no night. Hundreds of years before that, the commune, it would have been far too cold for them to walk there without heavy clothing at that latitude. Now it was warm and a friendly 25 degrees Celsius. As he walked southwards, he could not help but think about the divine destiny that guided him. Every time he needed water and food, the presence found it for him. Every time he needed shelter, he was able to find it before the elements overtook him. Then there was a sense of where to go. The landscape was hard to navigate, rendered near featureless by a lack of vegetation and out-of-control erosion. Yet he knew every twist and turn on his journey. Pop-Tart didn't need food or water. He did kill some insects, but he didn't actually eat them. He put them in his mouth. He just then spit them out later. Adam had never seen an actual living cat, so he didn't know how to measure how closely Pop-Tart's behavior would mirror that of an actual cat. His fur was artificial. It was still soft and comfortable to the touch. His artificial fur was black, but there was a sheen to his fur that made it almost look purplish in the right light. Adam knew that there was nothing in the world which was more loyal than Pop-Tart was to him. The robot cat followed him across the landscape and was always at his side. A little less than halfway back, Adam spotted a mining trawler from a distance. At first, Adam thought that he could follow it back to the city, but as he walked closer, he slowly came to realize that it was abandoned. There was a ladder on the side that enabled him to crawl inside. He put Pop-Tart into his bag and he climbed the ladder. On the inside of the trawler, it was completely apparent that the vehicle had been abandoned and there was no sign of habitation. Adam went to the bridge of the trawler and found that its coal supply was full. He could drive it back to Central City. That was if he had the programming to do so. It was controlled via a sync between the commune's chip implants and the trawler's main frame. Without the adequate software, though, he couldn't do anything, so he figured he could pillage from it and then continue on his way. When he went to the cabin, though, he discovered that miraculously he could control it. This was another gift that came from the presence. It would take weeks for the trawler to make it back to the city. Adam had never set the destination for one before, but knowledge of how to do so came to him from the presence. When the driver's eye clicked on something, the speaker on the screen would vocalize and explain how to control the trawler. When controlling it, Adam was able to see a map of North America. It was then it became apparent just how far in decline the collective truly was. There were dozens of planned cities across North America, and all but Central City had been abandoned or were in the process of being evacuated to Central City. Some, like the one which Adam visited, which he had learned was now named Navut City, were abandoned due to the sandstorms and erosion. Others were evacuated due to declining fertility. Apparently, all the financial incentives in the world that were given to women to have children wouldn't influence them to have children. For the cities that were not fully evacuated, Adam can see just how many were still active versus those who were retired, and he could see how much of the housing was dedicated to the aged. No city had a population of resident active people, though, save Central City, and all those who left to be evacuated were enthroned in chairs. Across North America, retired people outnumbered active people 462 to 1. Central City was now the final redoubt of humanity. Over the long journey back to Central City, Adam had nothing to do but to save sleep and play with Pop-Tart. Adam did not like the entertainment which was available on the tablets, and there were of course no books to read them. After having abstained from the commune's media for months, he found it far too vulgar to even consider engaging with. The ordinary films were almost as sexually graphic as the outright porn, and both were full of the commune's propaganda. If he couldn't read, then his second choice was games, but the video games available to him on the tablets were those made during the era of the commune, and they were just click-fest slop. He longed for the bootleg video games of his pod. He wished that he could play the ancient one with the monkey and the barrels. All the media created before the rise of the commune was the most popular, and the most bootlegged were the video games. The video games offered the player the ability to exist in a world which wasn't dominated by the commune, and it was not destroyed by its horrific environmental policies. The most popular games are the games that allowed the player to walk freely around in a beautiful natural environment. These games fulfilled a primal need that all humans had, which the planned cities of the commune could never fulfill. That need was the same need they had as hunter-gatherers thousands of years before, to walk upon the earth and wander it. Being cooped up in the urban cage led to alienation, which ate away at the heart of every man. The sterile urban life of the commune was a kind of slavery that pornography and drugs could never free you from. After not having a meaningful dream in quite some time, the first dream that Adam had on that trawler hit him with full force. Adam found himself standing before a crowd. He was a speaker, and they were all silent, listening to him intently and enthusiastically. It was then that Adam noticed that neither he nor the crowd were human. They were the lizard men of which he had read on the coming of the incarnate Archon. It was then that he realized that he was one himself. The narrative and action of the dream paused. During this pause, Adam examined his body. The outline and shape of his body were identical to that of a human. 4 limbs ending each in 5 digits. He was bipedal and standing upright, perpendicular to the ground. Even the proportions of his face were identical with that of a human. Large eyes with a small nose and a mouth all in the same position, and all about the same size. Nonetheless, their roots and dinosaur kind meant that there were differences. Instead of hair, there was fine downy feathers on his head. Their ears were not external, and their skin was covered in scales. Nina's pseudo-reptilian-like appearance did not resemble this true dinosaurian appearance. Theirs was far more natural and beautiful. Adam didn't remember what exactly he had been saying before the dream began in media res. Then it started coming to him. He was speaking about the environment, and the destruction thereof, which his kind had left in its wake. Just as all the mammalian megafauna of the Pleistocene had been driven to extinction by humans, all the archosaur and other reptilian fauna of the Masterian had gone extinct due to the dinosauroids. Yet, that was just the beginning of the destruction that they had inflicted upon the earth. In the millennia following the establishment of dinosauroids as the communal apex predator, the sea, the land, and the air were polluted, and global diversity was on the verge of collapse. Adam was absolutely livid about that, and so were his audience. It went far deeper for them than mere anger, and his speech had religious connotations. When his speech finished, His audience gathered into a line. He then saw that his underling was passing out edible tablets to each person who had arrived. Once each of the attendees of the rally had taken a tablet, they returned to where they had originally been when Adam had made his speech. Adam looked on his pride as one by one, all those that took the tablets died in collective suicide. Adam and his underling dinosauroid who had passed out the tablets were the only two who were left there standing. Adam took great pride that his followers had been dedicated to their cause, and then he left the stage for the next mass suicide. Adam was jolted awake from his nightmare. It took him a long time to orient himself to the waking world and understand that his dream was not real life, or at least that it wasn't currently real life. He felt horrified that he had been the leader of a suicide cult. It felt so real, as though it had really happened in a past life before that one. Bits and pieces of that world kept coming through into his mind and throughout that entire day. His recollection of the dream growing closer and closer, sharper and sharper, rather than fainter, as dreams normally do. The next night there was another dream. His vision slowly came into a focus upon a computer screen. Slowly the realization came to him that he was a soldier rather than a member of the Air Force. Below the screen was a set of dials and buttons. These were marked with a strange language and a completely foreign script that he didn't recognize at first. There was a keyboard with a script connected to the computer as well. Looking down at the controls and keyboard, Adam noticed his hand. He had reptilian hands like the ones in the last dream, but they are slightly different. He could feel that the proportions of his body and his head were almost identical to the ones of his human and dinosauroid bodies. This body was from a different archosaur lineage, though. He turned and saw the leader. They were in the military command center for their vast nation. A crisis was at hand. The nation's airspace had been violated by its greatest rival, and now Pangaea, which was bisected by two great powers, one that had hegemony over the East and other that had hegemony over the West, and the West were the ones at fault. Adam was the head of the Air Force for the East. His doctrine involved the use of overwhelming force to meet any act of aggression, overwhelming retaliation, and a commitment to a nuclear first strike. That was a theory that his entire career was based on, and he was willing to enact his principles, no matter the cost, even if that meant the deaths of billions, even if it meant extinction for his race. As the incursions into the airspace grew more and more intense, the president begged Adam for advice, begged him to tell him what to do. The mob had chosen him to hold office as president. Perhaps not because he was the type of man who made decisions for himself, though. For making decisions, he had men like Adam to do it for him. Adam told the president that the only sensible option was total annihilation, full use of the entire nuclear stockpile to destroy not just the enemy's military forces, but their industrial capacity and ultimately their population centers as well. Adam had told him what he didn't want to hear, but it was an answer, and it was a decision that he could make, and so he complied with his subordinate's orders. Adam watched as over the course of mere 30 minutes all their missiles were launched. Once they were gone, he and the president stood there in silence. After all, there was nothing to say. It was over, and Adam felt satisfied. He had done it. He had struck true to his principles. His death was assured as that of his wife and children. They were going to have a worse death than him, too. Be killed by the blast. They were either going to die from radiation or starve. They would die slowly and be submitted to crushing pain, all due to the nuclear weapons that he had devoted his entire life to advancing. All he could do was watch the screen and his missiles travel across their projected trajectories over Pangaea, and as he did so, one thought forced out all the others, even the thoughts about his own dead children. It was neither unease nor guilt. It was a wave of pure satisfaction and contentment that filled him. Then it happened. The blast destroyed the silo. The fires did not engulf him directly. Instead, he was crushed under the rubble, which killed him instantly. Adam found himself jolted awake again by that nightmare. He knew he was not in it still, and that it was not real life, or at least real life in the current moment. Yet he struggled to believe it was not real. The strange guilt which about launching the nuclear weapons followed Adam throughout the day, and bits and pieces of that world and his life in it came to him as well. Like the dream before, the memory of the dream only became stronger, not weaker over time. Of particular prominence became the memories of his children and his wife. He found himself missing him, and then he felt guilty for his part in their ultimate destruction. On the third night, Adam had another dream. Adam was packing his bags for travel. He was going to visit every major city in the world across the entire continent of Pangaea. He would fly there and release the virus in each city. The virus was made to kill as many people as fast as possible, except for him and his accomplices, of course. They had all been given the vaccine, which was designed to perfectly inoculate them from the virus. If you caught the virus, you were not fated to die painfully. You'd simply fall into a coma as it incubated for a long enough time to spread to as many people as possible. After all, the chosen few were trying to save humanity and not to make it suffer. Or rather, it's the synapsid version of humanity, which was almost identical to the humans of Adam's current world, save hair and fleshy ears. The men of this epoch were quite advanced and had moved forwards more than the commune. They had reached Mars and Europa, and they had attained fusion power. With all these advances, humanity had moved into getting rid of work as much as it possibly could. People lived in a utilitarian order, which allowed them to experience all the sensual delights they could possibly desire. It was the most functional communism attainable. The results of this world order were that the least intelligent and most violent people were always having more kids than their intelligent and peaceful counterparts. As with the commune, there were interventions to try and correct this, but intelligence could only be corrected to the middle without causing an incredible increase in mental illness. Despite the interventions, the decline could not be stopped, only slowed. The chosen few's reasons for wiping out humanity were not merely due to the decline in intelligence alone. They opposed the decline in virtue among men, most clearly instantiated in society's widespread hedonism. There was no hope in restoring virtue through conversion. Society was already too far gone for that. They had to be wiped out, and man had to start again from the beginning. Adam had released the first virus that morning in a busy hotel, and all that he could think of now was that all those people deserved what he got, and he was the bringer of the retribution that they deserved, and that made him so giddy with excitement. He had jumped at the chance to be at the one that spread the virus, and now he was living out his dream. The others didn't want them to suffer, but Adam did, and he relished their deaths. Adam then was jolted awake from this nightmare, as with the others before it. Like the first nightmare, the most difficult part for him was to grapple was that he was responsible for doing something evil. If it was just a dream, then he shouldn't feel any guilt about it. But he knew that there was something more. And then the dreams kept going on and on. The first five of each corresponded to one of the 5 races that he had read about in the coming of the incarnate Archon. But it didn't end there. Every night he was a member of a different race. Every night he was contributing to that race's ultimate extinction, and in each of them he was the principal agent of their destruction.